Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my epic rant on what is undoubtedly, at least so far, the worst film that I have seen from this year. And quite honestly, the worst Marvel movie that I can think of off the top of my head that I have had the displeasure of sitting through. I am dead serious. I am not fucking around here. Morbius, or more BS, because this film is just nothing but bullshit, is a movie that has pretty much no redeeming qualities for me. And at least some of the bad or awful or forgettable Marvel movies from the past, at least they had something going for them. Morbius has absolutely nothing. There wasn't a single thing about this film that I enjoyed, that I liked, or I felt was at all noteworthy in a positive fashion. So yeah, this is the worst Marvel film that I've seen. And it's not just because it's the new one. No, it's the worst Marvel movie because there's nothing about it that I found worth a shit. I'd rather watch the 1990 Captain America movie with Matt Salinger and his rubber ears. I'd rather watch Generation X, that 90s TV movie. I'd rather watch all the X-Men movies, including the shitty ones. I'd rather watch Captain Marvel, or Black Panther, or Thor the Dark World. Hell, I would rather watch Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., starring David fucking Hasselhoff, than ever sit through Morbius ever again. Now, before I get around to absolutely destroying and annihilating this awful piece of shit movie, I want to give a special thanks to Brock for requesting this review. If there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Morbius is one of those films that's so pathetic and so laughably bad in so many ways that it seems like it's just a cruel joke. Like, its existence is just one massive prank. And that's funny and honestly pretty ironic because the film was released on April 1st. Sony released this movie on April Fool's Day. It's like they knew. The film had been delayed numerous times, and then the final release date is April 1st? They might as well have just trolled everybody. I mean, if Sony just released this film with the opening credits and then they rickrolled the audience, that would have been more entertaining and more worthwhile than the actual film. So the movie is directed by Daniel Espinosa, and this is a guy who directed some really generic, forgettable projects prior to this, but even those are nowhere near as abysmal as this movie is. And even the direction in those films is nowhere near as bad. I think he did an okay job with Safe House and Life. Life, I felt one of the biggest issues with that movie was really the script, not necessarily the direction. Here, oh my fucking god, the direction in this film is a disaster. It's hard to look at. It's the equivalent of blood spurting from a vein. It's just as chaotic and messy. So you have some scenes where things flow decently enough, where it seems like the director has some inkling of talent, and knows how to move the camera properly or use the right techniques or the right angles. But then there's other scenes where it's just all over the fucking place. It's just floaty, it's janky, it's jarring in its presentation because it's so messy and convoluted, and it just looks like an absolute clusterfuck at times. And there are moments where it's hard to even see what's going on because of the way that things are directed and the way that things are shot. The action sequences are lethargic, they are anemic, there's no real punch to them, no real energy. And when it comes to any moments that are supposed to carry dramatic weight, it's an absolute face plant because it doesn't really come across as anything that is genuinely strong in that regard. There's no real strong emotion from it. It does seem like it's the work of a director who did the film for a paycheck, had no real passion for the movie, and just messed around behind a camera and called it a fucking day. It doesn't seem like there's a real plan here. It doesn't seem like there's any real cohesion. It's a fucking mess. And that could honestly be due to the reshoots. It might not be entirely the director's fault, but what we have here is what we have. We don't have any access to anything else. So what you have is a disaster, a dumpster fire of a directing job, and it's definitely one of the film's biggest problems. But I probably would say it's not the film's biggest issue. Morbius's biggest problem, and where the majority of the bullshit comes from, is the screenplay. So the script is by two guys who have not really written anything that I would honestly say was good, let alone great. So you have Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. Now, first of all, Burke Sharpless sounds like a pseudonym. It sounds like a made-up name, and it sounds like the kind of thing that a writer would use to hide their real identity. I mean, this script is so bad, you might as well use a pseudonym. But no, it's his actual name. These are the two guys who wrote the Power Rangers movie from 2017, Gods of Egypt, The Last Witch Hunter, and Dracula Untold. None of those films are classics. But as bad as some of those are, even those aren't as bad as Morbius. The writing in this is astonishingly awful on numerous levels. For one, when it comes to the origin story of Morbius, it's cliched, it's boring, there's really not much to it, it's not engaging in the slightest. It tries to have a love story involving Morbius and this other woman that works with him, and it just falls completely flat. There's no real genuine passion or chemistry or anything. I mean, the way that this love story is put together between Morbius and Martine is just about as effective as the love story that some guy has with his waifu pillow. And that honestly might be even more believable. That might be a stronger relationship than the relationship in this script. And speaking of relationships, you have this connection that's supposed to be very strong between Morbius and his best friend, Milo, who turns on him and becomes his enemy. And there's no real genuine connection here. It's completely absent, or it's just rushed and it doesn't feel authentic. And on top of that, the way the script is written, Milo just turns into an evil bad guy in what feels like 10 seconds. There really isn't much of a deterioration when it comes to the relationship between Morbius and Milo. They have a little spat. Milo then somehow gets a hold of Morbius's super serum, and now he's a vampire, and now he's like Morbius. But unlike Morbius, he's totally fine with killing people and drinking human blood, and he wants power. And that just seems to be the only motivation you get with this villain. He just wants to be bad, or he wants to have all the power. And that's just fucking weak and lazy. And lazy is like the biggest takeaway, other than just pure incompetence when it comes to this script. Any attempt that this script tries to do to be funny is pure fucking cringe. It's levels of cringe that I have not seen before in a comic book film. I mean, you have lines of dialogue where people are talking about bland, flavorless gelatin. They're talking about how they're in a hospital and they're eating crappy gelatin. And I thought that was rather fitting, because this movie is the epitome of bland, flavorless, crappy hospital gelatin. So you have lines like that, and it just continues. Like, you have bullshit where Morbius is trying to be the Hulk, saying things like, "You don't want to see me when I'm hungry." Get it? You know, you don't want to see me when I'm angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. You're not the Hulk. You're fucking Morbius. A Spider-Man villain that a lot of people don't even fucking know exists, let alone give a shit about. Get your own fucking catchphrase. And then you have stuff like multiple lines of dialogue where Morbius or other characters are talking about how this is a mistake. And of course they're talking about the serum, but it seems like they're just talking about the movie. And it's like they know. It's like they're cognizant and they are aware of how shitty their film is. And just the humor is just so unfunny. There's a whole scene where Jared Leto's Morbius goes to this lab, and he's trying to get the lab in order to use it for his services, because it's a lab that some other people have gotten a hold of. And so he says something along the lines of this: "I'm going to need your laboratory. You can keep all the money, but leave the sciencey stuff in a bag of spicy Cheetos." I'm not making that shit up. That's an actual quote from this fucking movie. Leave the sciencey stuff. Sciencey stuff? That's not even a fucking word. I mean, how lazy can you fucking be? You can't even come up with some pseudoscience bullshit. You just have to literally write sciencey stuff? And if you thought that was bad, that scene continues. Because there's a moment later on where Morbius is supposed to be an intimidating force, where he's breaking some guy's bones, and then he says this line: "The pretty little stinky pinky." Yeah. The pretty little stinky pinky. That's your badass anti-hero, super strong vampire guy saying, "The pretty little stinky pinky." What is this, fucking Muppet Babies? What the fuck is this shit? Come on, man. And then, oh, you're like, oh, that's the height of the bullshit, right? It just keeps on streaming out of this movie's asshole and onto the page from these fucking writers, Because then there's a scene where Matt Smith's villain character is dancing in the fucking mirror like a twat to one of the shittiest rap songs you will ever hear in your entire fucking life. And it's awkward, and it's cringe, and it's all kinds of fucking bad, and it's embarrassing. It has the same energy as that disco dancing scene in Spider-Man 3, where emo Peter Parker is dancing on the streets. It has the same energy as that. And in fact, all the comedy in this film has the same energy as that scene. So yeah, I mean, holy shit. I mean, Matt Smith himself didn't even know what his motivation was. He didn't even know who he was even playing. Like, he thought he was playing one character, but then there are people who are saying that he might be playing some other villain. But he wasn't even really fully aware of that. This entire fucking script is full of moments that just represent that angry video game nerd clip where he's just going, "What were they thinking? Seriously, what were these writers fucking thinking?" Oh, they weren't thinking, because they were plastered on 36 fucking beers because they wrote a line of dialogue that even said something like that. There's a line between two cops where one of them says to the other, when's the last time you had 36 beers? When's the last time you had any beers? Hey, writers, maybe you shouldn't have any beers, period, while you're writing a script, because this is the result. It's a drunken mess. And then you have stuff where you deal with really annoying cliches that are just the epitome of laziness and incompetence from a writer, where you have the main villain Milo, and there's a scene where he's getting upset and angry about Michael, and he's going, "Perfect Michael, selfless Michael, Michael the favorite." These writers turned him into Chan fucking Brady from the Brady Bunch. They didn't learn from The Amazing Spider-Man, you know, the film that got a lot of criticism for the Lizard and how that character was written, with the whole poor Peter Parker. They didn't learn from that. They repeated that same fucking mistake with this movie. And I know this is a very little thing, and this is something that most people probably didn't even notice, but this is just another extension of how bad this script is. There is a moment in this film where one of the cop characters uses a litter box to try to coax a cat to come out of a room. And I know for some people they think, okay, that's probably not that big of a deal. But for a film that's littered with so many mistakes and so much bullshit, this is just something that sticks out to me. Because I have a cat, and I'm telling you that you are not going to coax any cat with a fucking litter box. I mean, if you want to coax a cat, use food. That's common fucking sense. Use a bowl of food, a bowl of milk, a bowl of tuna. Pretty much anything edible that a cat would like over a fucking litter box. That's the equivalent of trying to get a cat to take a shit. It's like, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come take a shit. Come take a shit. Oh, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come piss in this box. Come piss in this box, kitty. Like, what the fuck? I mean, the levels of stupidity and incompetence from this script are off the charts. Here's another one. Michael Morbius is conflicted about drinking human blood. He doesn't like doing that, even though it helps him and makes him more stable. But for some reason, He can't drink animal blood? He can't drink animal blood. I thought he wasn't an actual vampire. I mean, he doesn't get hurt by the sunlight. He can eat garlic. We don't actually see him eat garlic, but I can assume that he can eat garlic. So he's not a typical average vampire with vampire weaknesses. So why the fuck can he not just drink animal blood? No. It's got to be human blood. Maybe that's because that's how it was in the comics. I don't know. But yeah. That's just another one of many, just numerous, fucking stupid, idiotic aspects of this screenplay. Oh, and the climax, the final battle between Morbius and Milo. I bet you can guess how Morbius gets the upper hand in the comments if you haven't even seen the movie. If you guessed bats, you're correct. And your prize is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Except the pleasure of not seeing Morbius. And that's a pretty good prize, if you think about it. But yeah, he gets the upper hand with an army of CGI bats. Which is an idea that the same writers recycled from Dracula Untold, a film that they wrote years prior. So that checks off another box when it comes to the pure apathy and laziness when it comes to the effort from these writers. Oh, and a film that's marketed as like an action comic book film, you would think there'd be a lot of action in it, right? No. The script barely leaves any room for that. There's mostly boring lines of dialogue and exposition and really pathetic, piss poor, cringe attempts at humor. There's like a little 2-minute sequence with Morbius on a boat when he attacks some people. And then there's one other little scene where he gets in a bit of a scuffle with Milo in the first 45 to 50 minutes of the movie. And then when it comes to the entire film, there's maybe a total of 4 or 5 action sequences. And none of them are written in ways where they are memorable or exciting. And there's not really any other intrigue when it comes to this script either. You have this whole subplot with these 2 cops that goes nowhere and just feels like it's nothing but padding. Apparently, the character that Tyrese Gibson was playing in this film, Simon Stroud, is a big deal in the comics. He even has a robot arm. You never see him with a robot arm, and you never see him do anything other than follow the tracks of Morbius and investigate scenes of vampire murder, and that's it. And that's where you get the great moment when his partner is trying to coax a cat with a fucking litter box, which is where this film belongs. It just belongs in a giant litter box where cats can take a shit in it and take a piss, and bats can fly over and also do their business on it. But yeah, I mean, oh my god. So yeah, these characters, they just come across like they're fucking useless. Great! You bring in these characters, make it seem like they're a big deal, and they are fucking worthless and useless, and are just a waste of fucking time. Then, you have his girlfriend, Morbius's girlfriend, and she seems like she's a big deal, but then she gets fucking killed off. So what the fuck was the point of that? Oh, it was supposed to provide some kind of anger and moment of anguish for Morbius at the end. It didn't really do anything other than make me yawn, because it was just another extension of such a tired and tedious script. Oh, this is how we're going to inject some life and some care into the film. We're going to kill off the love interest who fucking sucked anyway. Great. Yeah, I totally give a shit now. So yeah, this script, I mean, whoo boy, what a stinker. I mean, even the connection that it makes with the MCU is just atrocious. I mean, it has the laziest post-credit scene that you will ever see in your life. You have the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, who shows up, says a few lines, and gets the fuck out of Dodge so he can collect his paycheck and move on to the next movie on his docket. I mean, that has to be the worst MCU post-credit scene of all time. Because this is technically an MCU film now because of the loose connection that it has with the MCU Spider-Man series. I mean, wow. This is just shockingly bad from just all levels. And if you think the script and the direction is bad enough, then you have the performances by the cast. There isn't a single performance from anyone in this film that is good or average. All of these performances are awful. All these performances are terrible. I mean, just jaw-droppingly bad. Jared Leto is sleepwalking throughout the majority of the movie in what seems like a near coma state, and anytime he tries to be charismatic or funny, it's a brick to the face. It hurts. It really hurts to watch. There's a whole scene where he's trying to have a moment of charisma with his girlfriend at a diner, and he puts his hands out in the light, and he's all like, oh, I'm not that kind of vampire. And that performance is pretty much exactly what you got from Jared Leto in that scene. I mean, who was he channeling? Jeff Goldblum? I mean, what is this awkward bullshit? When he's supposed to be badass or strong or a superhero, it doesn't work. For a guy who said all this shit in interviews saying that he was very passionate about this film and he really wanted to do it and he was looking forward to it, it sure doesn't show up in his performance. Matt Smith? Oh my god, man. His performance as Milo is just all kinds of bad from numerous different facets and levels. I mean, his performance is hammy to the point where you just feel bad for the guy because it's just embarrassing. And I said it before, I'll say it again. It is a really embarrassing performance from Matt Smith. The things that he does in this, it's just really hard to watch, to see an actor be put through this, doing the stupid dancing and doing the whole Jan Brady shtick and him trying to be intimidating and scary, which is just a laugh riot. It doesn't help either that he looks like George McFly from Back to the Future. That was a comparison that a friend of mine made, and I thought it was pretty apt. He does. He looks like George McFly from Back to the Future. I half expected him to chase after Michael Morbius and be like, "You're my density. I mean, destiny, Morbius." So yeah, just a really, really bad performance, fitting for a bad movie. Adria Arjona, who was in the Belko Experiment and did a much better job in that film, is incredibly bad as well. Like, her performance is like something you would see on OnlyFans or from your average porno. I swear, she had all the acting range of a fucking waifu pillow in this movie. or a sex doll. Just lifeless, dead-eyed, no real energy, no chemistry at all with Jared Leto. She said that she was the smart one in the room in this movie, and I think that's fucking hilarious. Because there's nothing about this character or this performance that would make you think that she's the smart one in the room. Yeah, the smart one in the room is the one that gets captured by the bad guy and fucking dies. Yeah, definitely the smartest one in the room. Jared Harris plays this mentor and father figure to Michael and Milo, who might as well just be this film's version of Alfred. You have Al Madrigal, who plays the comic relief buddy agent who works with Tyrese Gibson's character, Simon Stroud. And I swear to God, he was just doing his best impression of Jay Baruchel, the guy from She's Out of My League. I thought it was Jay Baruchel, but apparently it's not. It's this other guy who's just the same fucking guy, but a different actor. Just like Matt Smith is just Crispin Glover with a British accent. And Tyrese Gibson, I mean, he's just bored and lifeless, and he signed on for 3 films. Buddy, you ain't seeing any of that. You're not going to be in any more Morbius movies. This is not going to be a franchise. And you also have Michael Keaton, who has his little cameo role in the end credits as Vulture. And even Keaton can't save it. Even his little cameo sucks. He talks about how he hopes the food in the joint is better, just like I hope that this movie was better and it wasn't a flaming garbage fire of a motion picture. But no, instead, it was a vampiric venereal disease. So I feel for you, Keaton. I wish things were better too, but they're not. I watched Morbius. And Morbius is so bad, it might as well be a new form of an STD. Oh shit! I'm pissing blood everywhere! Fuck! I've got Morbius! Oh man. The cinematography by Oliver Wood is about as impressive as a block of wood. The editing by Pietro Scalia is... it is stupendously shitty. I mean, this is a film that just has editing that's just really an eyesore to watch, especially in the action scenes. The use of slow-mo in particular, the way that things are edited, it's not epic, it's not cool, it's just lame. And in all honesty, when you see these scenes of Morbius flying around or using his powers with all these colors that are shredding, it almost looks like he's just propelling himself via the farts from his ass. Like, you might as well have fart sound effects in the background every time he's jumping on and flying around. The colors that are shredding, the CGI stuff that you see flying around the screen whenever Morbius or Milo are teleporting or flying around or doing their slow-mo shtick, it might as well be fart fumes. It might as well be that. Seriously. The film also features a score by a guy named John Elkstrand, and I can't think of a single strand or a single moment of this score that was good, let alone anything other than irritating. Like, a good chunk of this score is just what sounds like air raid sirens just blaring in your fucking eardrums. And this guy had the audacity to say in an interview that he was inspired by John fucking Carpenter? You gotta be fucking kidding. And this shit cost $83 million? Where did it go? Because this looked like a direct-to-video movie. This film should have been released direct to streaming. It had been delayed numerous times already. They might as well have just released it on Disney Plus or Hulu instead of subjecting people to this and actually trying to get people to pay money to see this shit. I mean, I feel bad for anyone that paid full price to watch this. You should ask for your money back. 104 minutes of pain and torture. It's like the worst fucking hickey of all time for 104 minutes. You don't get off. You just have a giant red mark on your neck, and the woman's breath smells like ass, and it's just a really miserable experience all the way around. This film sucks on every level. It sucks as a comic book film. It sucks as an action movie. It sucks as a horror film because it has no fucking balls and it has no teeth. How are you going to have a movie about a vampire vigilante and make it PG-13? You can't. This is the end result of that. You have scenes that are trying to be scary, but are about as scary as a pop-up book or a Dr. Seuss book or some other children's novel, because there's no real bite to it. There's no gore. They try to have some blood, but it's a lot of cutaways. Like a lot of these scenes when Morbius or Milo are attacking people, it seems like there should be like blood or limbs flying or some kind of evisceration or something along those lines. But no, you can't do it because it's PG-13. This is what makes me worried about the new Blade film. This is like if you did Blade and it was PG-13 and it had no charm, had no charisma, had no entertainment value, and it might as well have just been a Blade right up your ass. It's just one of those things where nothing about this fucking worked. Like I said, it sucks on every level. It even sucks as a comedy for the reasons I mentioned. It sucks as a drama when it comes to any of these moments where it's trying to be dramatic. Like there are these scenes that try to build up a friendship between Milo and Michael when they were kids. And it's the kind of shit that you would see on Lifetime. And it's pretty laughable. And it's just as bad as everything else. But it's just one of those things where this film is more BS. And I know that's a term that's been used already to describe this movie, but it's the perfect way to describe this fucking film. It's more bullshit, and I don't want any of it. I don't want to ever see this fucking thing again. I would recommend you not to watch this movie, because there are definitely a lot better things that you can do with your time than watch this. I mean, forgive me for any of the moments about this video where I've flubbed a line or I've said shit that doesn't make sense. I'm discombobulated. I am out of sorts because I sat through fucking Morbius. Okay? That's why. I mean, this is even worse than something like Man-Thing. Do you remember Man-Thing? That Marvel movie that aired on the Sci-Fi Channel that I think was maybe intended to have a theatrical release, but then Lionsgate decided to make it a TV movie or a direct-to-video film directed by the guy who directed The Lawnmower Man. That was the most forgettable Marvel movie and one of the worst Marvel movies that I could think of until I saw Morbius. So yeah. And this is right up there with some of the worst comic book films that I've seen. It's right up there with Catwoman with Halle Berry. It's right up there with Steel with Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, even the worst film in the current DC cinematic universe is better than fucking Morbius. I'm just going to come out and say it. Because this film sucks. It sucks my dick. It sucks my balls. It sucks my taint. And it sucks my fucking ass. And it sucks my fucking brains too. And my soul. Because it sucks on every single fucking level.